Look at yourself right now. What are you wearing? A shirt, pants, maybe a jacket, shoes, socks, maybe jewelry. You put these on this morning without thinking. You chose colors. You chose a style. You got dressed in 5 minutes and started your day. But stop for a moment. Why are you wearing clothes at all? Think about it. You are the only animal on earth that wears clothes. Dogs don't. Cats don't. Lions don't. Elephants don't. Birds don't. Only humans. We are born naked like every other animal. But within hours, someone puts clothes on us. And we wear them every single day for the rest of our lives. Why? Is it because we are cold? No. Humans live in hot places too, Africa, India, Australia. They still wear clothes. Is it because we are ashamed? Maybe, but why are we ashamed when no other animal is? Is it for protection? Partly. But animals have fur and scales and shells. We gave up our fur and then made artificial fur from plants and animals. It's strange when you think about it. And here's the truth. Scientists still debate why humans started wearing clothes. Nobody knows for sure, but what we do know is this. Clothes changed everything. Clothes created status. Clothes started wars. Clothes built empires and destroyed them. Clothes enslaved millions, and today, clothes are killing the planet. This is the story of clothes, and it starts with a mystery. 200,000 years ago, early humans lived in Africa. They looked like us. They walked like us. They had big brains like us. But they didn't wear clothes. They were naked. Just like the other animals around them, the weather was warm. They didn't need protection from cold, so why would they wear anything? But then something changed. We don't know exactly when. We don't know exactly why, but humans started covering their bodies. Scientists have tried to figure out when this happened. They can't find ancient clothes because fabric rots. It disappears after a few hundred years, so how do we know early humans wore clothes? Lice. Yes, tiny bugs that live in hair. There are 2 kinds of lice. Head lice live in the hair on your head. Body lice live in clothing. Scientists studied body lice DNA. They discovered that body lice evolved from head lice about 170,000 years ago. That means humans were wearing clothes 170,000 years ago, long before agriculture, long before cities, long before writing. Clothes are older than civilization itself. But why? Why did humans start wearing clothes? Theory 1. Cold. As humans left Africa and moved north into Europe and Asia, the weather got colder. Ice ages came. Humans needed warmth. Animal skins kept them alive. That makes sense. But humans in Africa also wore clothes, and Africa is hot. So cold weather is not the only answer. Theory 2. Protection. Humans are weak compared to other animals. We don't have claws. We don't have thick skin. We don't have shells. The sun burns us. Thorns cut us. Insects bite us. Clothes protect us. That makes sense too. Theory 3. Modesty. Many cultures believe humans wear clothes because of shame. Religious stories say humans discovered shame and covered themselves. That's possible. But shame might be a result of wearing clothes, not the cause. We might feel shame because we learned to wear clothes, not the other way around. Theory 4. Status. This is the most interesting theory. Maybe humans started wearing clothes to show off, to look different, to attract mates, to show they were important. Animals have colorful feathers and fur for this reason. Humans lost their fur. So they made artificial decorations. They wore necklaces of shells. They painted their skin. They wore animal skins not for warmth but for beauty. To say, look at me. I am special. This theory makes sense because throughout history, clothes have always been about status. About showing who you are. About separating the rich from the poor. The powerful from the weak. The truth is probably all of these reasons together. Cold, protection, modesty, status. But one thing is certain. Once humans started wearing clothes, everything changed. Early clothes were simple. Animal skins, leather, fur, plant fibers woven together. But even these simple clothes required work. You had to hunt the animal, skin it, clean the skin, dry it, soften it, sew pieces together using bone needles and thread made from animal sinew. It took time, it took skill. So clothes had value. If you owned good clothes, you were successful. You were a good hunter, you were smart, you had status. And that's where the story gets dark. Because once clothes had value, people started controlling who could wear what. Clothes became power, clothes became law. Clothes became death. In ancient Egypt, Everyone wore linen. Egypt was hot. Linen is light and breathes well, but there was a difference. The quality of your linen showed your place in society. Pharaohs and nobles wore the finest linen. Pure white, thin, almost transparent, so fine that it took skilled weavers weeks to make. They wore elaborate pleated robes that required enormous amounts of fabric and labor. Common people wore rougher linen. Brown or gray, thicker, cheaper. Slaves often wore almost nothing. Just a simple cloth around their waist. In Egypt, you could look at someone and immediately know their status just from their clothes. But Egypt was nothing compared to Rome. In Rome, clothes could kill you. The Roman Empire had many rules about clothing. But one rule was absolute. One color was forbidden to everyone except the emperor. Purple. Not just any purple. Tyrian purple. A specific deep purple dye made from sea snails. Why was purple so special? Because it was impossibly expensive. To make just 1 gram of Tyrian purple dye, you needed 10,000 sea snails. Workers had to catch the snails, crush them, extract a tiny amount of liquid from each one. The liquid smelled terrible, rotting fish and chemicals. The process took months. The result was a dye more expensive than gold. Only emperors could afford it. And Roman law said only emperors could wear it. If anyone else wore purple clothing, it was treason. The punishment was death. Think about that. Wearing the wrong color could get you executed. Purple became the symbol of absolute power. Born to the purple meant you were born into the royal family. The phrase still exists today. All because of expensive snail juice and laws about clothing. Rome also had other clothing laws. Togas for Roman citizens, tunics for non-citizens. Soldiers wore specific military dress. Senators wore togas with purple stripes, but not full purple. Everything was regulated. Everything had meaning. Your clothes told everyone exactly who you were and where you belonged in society, and Rome was not unique. Across the world, in China, Japan, medieval Europe, the same pattern appeared. Governments passed sumptuary laws. Laws that controlled what people could wear based on their social class. In medieval Europe, these laws were incredibly detailed. Peasants could only wear brown or gray wool. Simple cuts, no decoration. Merchants could wear some colors but not others. They could have some decoration but not too much. Nobles could wear silk and fur and bright colors and gold thread. Everything was specified. The length of your robe, the type of fur on your collar, the number of buttons. Breaking these laws meant fines or punishment. Why did governments care so much about clothing? Control. If everyone dresses according to their class, society stays stable. Nobody pretends to be higher than they are. Nobody forgets their place. Clothing enforced the social order. Clothing was law. But some fabrics were so rare, so expensive, so desired that they caused international conflict. Silk. For 3,000 years, China kept silk production a complete secret. Silk came from silkworms. But nobody outside China knew that. Chinese emperors made the silk secret a matter of national security. Anyone caught smuggling silkworms or silk eggs out of China faced execution, the death penalty for insects. That's how valuable silk was. European nobles paid fortunes for Chinese silk. The Silk Road, the famous trade route connecting Asia and Europe, was named after this precious fabric. Romans loved silk so much they paid the equivalent of its weight in gold. Eventually, around 500 AD, according to legend, 2 monks smuggled silkworm eggs out of China hidden in their walking sticks. The secret was out. But for thousands of years, silk was the ultimate luxury, and China controlled it completely. Clothes were not just fashion. They were economics. They were politics. They were international trade and national secrets. But the darkest chapter in clothing history was about to begin. And it involved a fabric that seems innocent, soft, comfortable. Cotton. Cotton changed the world, and not in a good way. Cotton is an amazing fabric, soft, breathable, easy to dye, easier to work with than wool. More comfortable than linen in hot weather. Cotton had been grown in India for over 5,000 years. Indian cotton fabric was legendary. When European traders discovered Indian cotton in the 1600s, they were amazed. They brought it back to Europe. Everyone wanted it. British merchants started importing huge amounts of Indian cotton. The British East India Company became rich from cotton trade. But Europeans wanted more than trade. They wanted to grow cotton themselves, and they found the perfect place. The American South. The climate was ideal, the land was cheap. There was just one problem. Cotton is hard to process. Each cotton plant produces cotton bolls. Fluffy white cotton surrounds seeds. But separating the cotton fiber from the seeds is slow, painful work. By hand, one person could clean about 1 pound of cotton per day. That's all, just 1 pound. It made cotton expensive. It made large-scale cotton farming impractical. Until 1793. That year, a man named Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin. A simple machine that separated cotton from seeds mechanically. Suddenly, one person with a cotton gin could process 50 pounds of cotton per day, 50 times faster. You would think this invention would reduce the need for labor, right? Fewer workers needed, less slavery. You would be wrong. The opposite happened. The cotton gin made cotton profitable, extremely profitable. So profitable that plantation owners wanted to grow as much as possible. More cotton fields meant more planting, more harvesting, more processing. The cotton gin only helped with one step, the separation of seeds from fiber. Everything else still required human hands. Hands to clear land and prepare fields. Hands to plant seeds in long rows under the burning sun. Hands to tend to growing plants, removing weeds and pests. Hands to harvest the cotton bolls when they ripened, bending over plants from dawn until dusk. Hands to haul heavy sacks to the gin. Hands to bale the processed cotton. Hands for every step except one. And plantation owners realized they could make enormous profits if they just had more hands. More workers, so they bought more enslaved people. They bought them in huge numbers. Before the cotton gin, about 700,000 enslaved people lived in America. By 1860, just before the Civil War, there were almost 4 million. 4 million human beings treated as property. The cotton gin didn't reduce slavery. It expanded slavery dramatically. It made slavery more profitable than ever before. Cotton plantations spread across the South. Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas. Millions of acres planted with cotton. And millions of people forced to work those fields. People who were bought and sold at auctions like cattle. Who could be separated from their families at any moment. Who had no rights, no freedom, no hope. Children born into slavery knew they would die in slavery. That was the system. That was the reality, and it was all for cotton. The conditions were brutal beyond imagination. Enslaved workers woke before sunrise. They worked until after sunset. In summer heat that could reach over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. No breaks except a short meal at midday. Overseers on horses watched constantly, carrying whips. Each worker had a quota. A certain amount of cotton to pick each day. If you didn't meet your quota, you were whipped. If you were too slow, you were whipped. If you complained, you were whipped. If you tried to run away and were caught, the punishment was severe. Public whipping, branding with hot irons, sometimes death. Families lived in small wooden shacks with dirt floors. Food was minimal. Just enough to keep workers alive and working. Medical care was almost non-existent. The American South became the world's largest cotton producer. Cotton was called King Cotton. It was America's most valuable export by far. It made plantation owners incredibly rich. Some became millionaires, which in the 1800s meant unimaginable wealth. It made merchants rich. It made shipping companies rich. It made textile factory owners in Britain and New England rich. The entire economy of the American South ran on cotton. Banks financed cotton plantations. Railroads transported cotton. Ports shipped cotton. Cities grew to support the cotton trade. All of it built on slavery. All of it built on human suffering. That's the truth about cotton. That's the dark history hiding in every t-shirt, and the darkness didn't end with slavery. In Britain, cotton created a different kind of suffering. The Industrial Revolution began with textiles. British inventors created machines that could spin cotton thread and weave cotton fabric faster than any human hand. Spinning jennies, power looms, water frames. These machines needed workers, lots of workers. And the factory owners found them. Children. Starting as young as 5 or 6 years old, children worked in textile factories. They worked 12 to 14 hours a day, sometimes longer, 6 days a week. The factories were dark, loud, dangerous. Children worked barefoot between massive machines. If they got tired, overseers hit them to keep them awake. If they made mistakes, they were punished. If their fingers got caught in the machines, there were no safety features. Many children lost fingers. Some lost hands. Some died. Factory owners preferred children because they were cheap. They could pay children almost nothing. Children were small and could fit between machines to fix threads, and children didn't complain, at least not successfully. This went on for decades. Children in factories making cotton clothes while their childhood disappeared. Britain got rich from cotton, but the cost was paid in children's blood and tears. Meanwhile, India, where cotton originally came from, suffered too. British colonizers wanted to control the entire cotton trade. They forced Indian farmers to grow cotton for export. They shipped raw cotton to Britain. British factories processed it. Then Britain sold finished cotton products back to India at high prices. India, which had been making beautiful cotton fabric for 5,000 years, was forced to buy British factory goods. The British destroyed Indian textile industries on purpose to eliminate competition. Skilled Indian weavers lost their jobs. Some died of starvation. Also, British factories could profit. The history of cotton is the history of exploitation, slavery in America, child labor in Britain, colonization in India. All for soft, comfortable fabric. All hidden in the clothes we wear without thinking. But another revolution was coming. A revolution that would change clothing forever. In the early 1800s, almost all clothing was made by hand. Women did most of this work. Sewing was expected. Every girl learned to sew. And sewing a single garment took an enormous amount of time. A simple shirt required about 14 hours of hand sewing. 14 hours for one shirt. A dress could take 40 or 50 hours, maybe more for something fancy. This meant several things. First, most people owned very few clothes. 2 or 3 outfits total, maybe one nice outfit for special occasions. You wore your clothes until they fell apart. Then you patched them. You repaired them, you wore them some more. Throwing away clothing was unthinkable. Second, only wealthy people could afford many clothes or fashionable clothes. Having a large wardrobe meant you could afford either to buy expensive handmade items or to pay servants to sew for you. Clothes were a major expense. Third, fashion changed slowly. Because making clothes took so long, styles stayed the same for years or even decades. There were no fast trends. No disposable fashion. Then, in 1846, everything changed. The sewing machine was invented. Several inventors worked on sewing machines around the same time. Elias Howe patented the first practical one. Isaac Singer improved the design and marketed it successfully. The sewing machine could sew a straight seam about 10 times faster than a human hand. Suddenly, that 14-hour shirt became a 90-minute shirt. Dresses that took 2 days could be finished in hours. The impact was immediate and enormous. The ready-made clothing industry was born. Before sewing machines, almost all clothes were custom-made. A tailor or seamstress measured you and made clothes to fit. With sewing machines, factories could produce standard sizes: small, medium, large. You could go to a store and buy clothes off a rack. Ready to wear. This was revolutionary. For the first time in history, ordinary people could afford multiple outfits. Fashion became accessible. The middle class could buy nice clothes. Styles could change more frequently because producing new designs was faster and cheaper. The modern clothing industry began. But like every industrial revolution, it had a dark side. Sewing machines were fast, but someone still had to operate them. And factory owners wanted to maximize profit. So they created sweatshops. Sweatshops were crowded rooms filled with sewing machines. Workers, mostly young women and immigrant girls, sat at machines for 12 or 14 hours a day, sometimes 16 during busy seasons. They were paid by the piece, not by the hour. The more garments they completed, the more money they earned. But the rates were deliberately set low. To make enough money to survive and pay rent for their cramped tenement rooms, they had to work incredibly fast without stopping. All day. Every day. No sick days. No vacation. If you were sick, you didn't get paid. If you missed work, someone else took your job. The conditions were terrible beyond description. Poor lighting that strained eyes until workers went blind by their 30s. Bad ventilation that filled lungs with cotton dust and caused respiratory diseases. No safety rules. No fire escapes. No emergency exits. Fabric scraps piled everywhere. Fire hazards in rooms lit by open flames or early electric lights. In 1891, a fire at a New York garment factory, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, killed 146 workers. Most were young immigrant women, some as young as 14. The doors had been locked from the outside by the owners to prevent workers from taking unauthorized breaks or stealing fabric. When the fire started on the 8th floor and spread rapidly through the fabric and paper patterns, the workers couldn't escape. They died trapped inside, pounding on locked doors, or jumping from 8th floor windows to escape the flames. Bystanders below watched in horror as young women fell to their deaths. The tragedy led to some labor reforms and factory safety laws, but sweatshops continued. They still exist today. The sewing machine made clothes accessible, but it also created a system of exploitation that continues into the present. The 20th century brought another revolution: synthetic fabrics. For all of human history, clothes came from nature: cotton from plants, linen from flax, wool from sheep, silk from worms, leather from animals. But in 1935, scientists at the DuPont company created something new: nylon, the first fully synthetic fabric. Made from chemicals. Made from petroleum. Made in a laboratory. DuPont marketed nylon as a miracle fiber, stronger than silk, more elastic than any natural fabric, and cheap to produce. Nylon stockings became a massive hit with women. Before nylon, stockings were silk, expensive, delicate, they tore easily. Nylon stockings were cheaper and more durable. Women loved them. Then World War II started. The military needed nylon for parachutes, ropes, and other equipment. Suddenly, nylon stockings disappeared from stores. The government asked women to donate their nylon stockings to help the war effort. Women did, patriotically. They went without stockings to support soldiers. When the war ended and nylon stockings returned to stores, there were riots. Literally, women lined up by the thousands. Stores ran out instantly. It seems silly now, but it shows how much people wanted these new synthetic fabrics. After nylon came other synthetics. Polyester in 1951, acrylic, spandex in 1958, which could stretch 5 times its size and return to shape. These fabrics had advantages. They were cheap. They dried quickly. They didn't wrinkle easily. They were durable. Polyester could be mixed with cotton to make fabrics that needed no ironing. This was marketed as modern, convenient, the future, and in many ways, it was. Synthetic fabrics made clothing even cheaper and more accessible. But there were problems that nobody anticipated. Synthetic fabrics don't breathe well. They trap heat and moisture against your skin. They're uncomfortable in hot weather. They smell bad after exercise because bacteria grow in them more easily than in natural fibers. And they had another problem that nobody realized at first, a problem that wouldn't become clear for decades. They're plastic, made from petroleum, derived from the same crude oil used for gasoline and other petroleum products. When you wash synthetic clothes, something invisible happens. Tiny plastic fibers break off during the washing and agitation. Microplastics. These fibers are so small you cannot see them with the naked eye. They go down the drain with the wash water, into sewage systems, into rivers, into oceans, into the water supply. Wastewater treatment plants cannot filter them out because they're too small, so they flow into the environment. Today, microplastics from synthetic clothing are everywhere on Earth, in the deepest parts of the ocean, in Arctic ice, in mountain streams, in farm soil, in the fish we eat, in the water we drink, in the air we breathe. Scientists have found microplastics in human blood samples, in human lungs, in placentas of pregnant women. We are breathing and eating plastic particles from our own clothes every single day. The health effects are still being studied, but early research suggests these microplastics cause inflammation and may be linked to various diseases. Every time you wash a synthetic shirt or pair of pants, you release hundreds of thousands of plastic fibers into the environment. Multiply that by billions of people washing clothes every week. The scale is staggering. But in the 1950s and 60s, nobody thought about this. They just thought synthetics were modern and convenient. The long-term cost wouldn't be clear for decades. By the late 20th century, clothing had become abundant, cheap, easy. The average person owned more clothes than any king in history. Closets overflowed. But then something changed. Fashion became fast, very fast. In the 1980s and 90s, a new business model emerged. Fast fashion. Companies like H&M, Zara, Forever 21, and later Shein perfected this model. The idea was simple but revolutionary. Copy runway fashion immediately, produce it cheaply. Get it into stores within weeks. Sell it cheap. Move on to the next trend. Traditional fashion worked on seasons. Spring collection. Fall collection. Designers showed new styles months in advance. Manufacturing took time. By the time clothes reached stores, months had passed. Fast fashion collapsed this timeline. Designers could see a trend on social media or a fashion show and have copies in stores within 2 weeks. 2 weeks from design to store shelf. This required a completely new supply chain. Factories that could produce small batches quickly. Cheap labor. Lots of cheap labor. The fashion industry moved production to the developing world. Bangladesh, Vietnam, Cambodia, China. Countries with low wages. Weak labor laws. Governments that wouldn't interfere. In these countries, garment factories employed millions of workers, mostly women. Working conditions were terrible. Long hours. Low pay. Often $2 or $3 per day. Unsafe buildings. Locked exits. No fire safety. Verbal abuse. Physical punishment. Workers had no power, no unions, no rights. If they complained, they were fired. Someone else would take their job immediately. The factories produced clothes as fast as possible. As cheap as possible. Speed and price were everything. Quality didn't matter. These clothes were designed to be worn a few times and thrown away. On April 24, 2013, a building in Bangladesh collapsed. Rana Plaza. It was an 8-story building full of garment factories. Over 5,000 workers were inside. The day before, cracks had appeared in the walls. Engineers inspected the building. They said it was unsafe. They said evacuate immediately. But the factory owners ordered workers back inside. They threatened to withhold pay if workers refused. The workers needed the money desperately. They went back inside. The next day, the building collapsed. Concrete and steel pancaked down. Workers were crushed, trapped, buried alive. Over 1,100 people died. More than 2,500 were injured. Some were trapped in the rubble for days before being rescued. Some lost limbs that had to be amputated to free them. It was the deadliest garment industry accident in history. And it happened because clothing companies demanded cheap clothes fast, because consumers wanted $5 t-shirts, because profit mattered more than human life. The Rana Plaza disaster shocked the world. People started asking questions. Where do my clothes come from? Who made them? Under what conditions? Some companies promised to improve factory safety. Some activists pushed for change. Documentaries exposed the reality of fast fashion. But the system continues largely unchanged. Today, Shine, a Chinese fast fashion company, is one of the world's largest clothing sellers. They release hundreds of new styles every single day. Not per season, not per month, per day. Hundreds of new items daily. They sell clothes so cheap that buying new is often cheaper than doing laundry. A dress for $3. A shirt for $2. Cheaper than a coffee. This creates a psychology of disposability. Why wash and care for clothes when you can just buy new ones? Why repair when replacement is so cheap? The average person now buys 60% more clothing items per year than they did in the year 2000. But they wear each item about half as many times before discarding it. This combination is devastating. More clothes bought, less time worn. More waste produced. This is the reality of modern fast fashion. Abundance built on suffering, but the human cost is only part of the story. There's also the environmental cost. And it's staggering. The fashion industry is now the second largest polluter in the world, second only to oil. Fashion produces 10% of global carbon emissions. That's more than all international flights and maritime shipping combined. Cotton farming uses enormous amounts of water and pesticides. It takes about 7,000 liters of water to produce one pair of jeans. 7,000 liters. Dyeing and treating fabrics uses toxic chemicals that pollute rivers. Factories dump waste into waterways. Entire rivers in China and Bangladesh have changed color from textile dyes. Animals die. People get sick. Then there's the waste. The average person buys 60% more clothing today than they did 20 years ago. But they wear each item half as much. Clothes are designed to fall apart quickly. Fast fashion quality is terrible on purpose. You wear something 3 times and throw it away. Where does it go? Landfills. 85% of textiles end up in landfills. Every second, one garbage truck full of clothes is burned or dumped. Synthetic fabrics don't decompose. They sit in landfills for hundreds of years. Natural fabrics like cotton decompose but release methane, a greenhouse gas. And then there are those microplastics we mentioned. Every time you wash synthetic clothes, thousands of tiny plastic fibers break off. They're too small for filters to catch. They go into the water system, into the ocean. Fish eat them. We eat the fish. We drink the water. Plastic from clothes is inside us, inside everyone. The fashion industry is poisoning the planet and poisoning us. All so we can have cheap, trendy clothes that we throw away after a few wears. Some people are fighting back. The slow fashion movement encourages buying less, buying quality, wearing clothes longer, repairing instead of replacing. Second-hand and vintage shopping are becoming more popular. Some companies focus on sustainable and ethical production. They use organic cotton. They pay workers fairly. They minimize waste. But these efforts are still small compared to the massive fast fashion industry. Most people still buy cheap fast fashion. The system continues, so here we are. Humans started wearing clothes for reasons we still don't fully understand. Maybe warmth. Maybe protection. Maybe status. Probably all three. For most of history, clothes were valuable, hard to make, carefully maintained, passed down through generations. Clothes showed your place in society. Governments controlled who could wear what. Colors could get you killed. Fabrics started wars. Then came industrialization. Sewing machines, factories. Clothes became cheaper, more accessible, more abundant. That seems good, and in many ways it was. More people could afford nice clothes. Fashion became democratic, but the cost was hidden. Slavery made cotton cheap. Child labor made factory production profitable. Colonization destroyed traditional industries. Sweatshops kept prices low. Workers suffered. The environment suffered. Today, clothes are so cheap and abundant that we take them completely for granted. We throw away more clothes than our ancestors owned in their entire lives. We complain about having nothing to wear while our closets overflow. We buy clothes, wear them once, and forget about them. We have achieved the ultimate abundance. But at what cost? Maybe it's time to think about clothes again. Really think about them, not just what they look like. Not just whether they're fashionable or comfortable, but where they came from. Who made them? Under what conditions? What they're made of? Where they'll go when we're done with them? Every piece of clothing you own has a story. It started as cotton in a field or petroleum in the ground. It was processed, dyed, cut, sewn, by someone's hands. Probably someone working long hours for little pay in a factory, far away. It was shipped across the ocean, sold in a store, bought by you. You'll wear it for a while. Maybe a long while if you're careful. Maybe just a few times if you follow fast fashion. And then what? The trash? A donation bin? Where does it go from there? For most of history, humans had deep relationships with their clothes. You knew the person who made your shirt. You wore it for years. You repaired it. You valued it. Today we've lost that connection. Clothes are disposable, anonymous, cheap. We don't think about them. But maybe we should. Because the history of clothes is really the history of humanity. Our need for protection and status. Our creativity and innovation. Our capacity for both beauty and cruelty. Our ability to create systems that produce abundance while hiding terrible costs. The next time you get dressed, take a moment. Look at what you're wearing. Think about the journey those clothes took to reach you. Think about the thousands of years of human history that made it possible for you to own them. Think about the people who made them. Think about what happens when you're done with them. And maybe, just maybe, choose to wear them a little longer, to buy a little less, to value what you have a little more, because clothes are not just fabric, they're human stories. And right now, those stories need to change.